All right, let's talk about a tool that's probably in just about every city hall and county building across the country. It's designed to make government more efficient, the purchasing card, or P card. But what happens when that tool, the one that's supposed to offer convenience, becomes a direct pipeline for draining public funds? Well, that's exactly what we're digging into today. Let's just start with this number, $878,115. Now, that's not the price of a new fire truck or a public works project. No, that's the amount of money stolen from a single Washington state government office. And it was stolen using the very P cards meant to make small purchases easier.
And what's really incredible is how it all went down. This wasn't some sophisticated cyber attack. It was just a slow, methodical drain over 4 years by just one employee. This whole case just shines a massive spotlight on a quiet vulnerability that could exist inside your own organization right now. So, how did a simple tool for efficiency become such a huge risk?
Okay, first, let's look at the promise. P cards weren't created with bad intentions, not at all. In fact, they were brought in to solve a very real problem, good old-fashioned bureaucratic red tape.
And you can really see their appeal right here in this chart. At the federal level, P card spending just exploded. And that trend, it quickly trickled down to state and local governments, probably just like yours. The idea was simple, right? Empower employees to make small, necessary purchases quickly without all the paperwork. The core idea was just so compelling. You could eliminate all that paperwork, get rid of petty cash, and cut through those long approval chains just to buy basic supplies. It was sold as a promise of a more nimble, more efficient government. But as we're about to see, all that speed and convenience came with a pretty serious hidden cost. And that brings us to the peril. See, when your controls don't keep up with the empowerment you're handing out, P card programs can become a huge target for fraud. So let's take a look at how this actually plays out in the real world. Our first stop is a public works department down in Georgia, a place just like one you might oversee, full of trusted, long-term employees. So here, a supervisor just completely exploited his position. He didn't just misuse his own card. No, he used his authority to sign off on other employees' cards, and he directed payments to a totally fake company he'd set up himself. All that money, it went straight into his personal bank account. The most important part here is that he was the one trusted to oversee the entire process. Now, this kind of fraud isn't just a big city problem. Let's head over to the town of Cusick, Washington. You might think, hey, we have low credit limits. That'll keep us safe. But this case proves that a determined person can always find a way around them. This scheme was, it was clever. The clerk-treasurer's card had a tiny $500 limit, but she used her authority to approve huge overpayments to the credit card company directly from the town's general fund. This created this massive credit balance on the card, which she then went and spent on herself. The limit meant nothing because the control point, the payment approval, was totally compromised. Our final case comes from Richmond, Virginia, and it shows a much more direct, but just as damaging, breakdown in the controls. In this case, a fire department employee spent nearly $1 million with one single vendor. The problem? That vendor was a company registered to his own home address. This is just a massive failure of the most basic control you can have, knowing who you are actually paying. These stories aren't just about a few bad apples. They're actually symptoms of a much bigger systemic issue. The one common thread that runs through nearly every single case of P card fraud is a failure of internal controls. This quote from the Richmond City Auditor really says it all. The problem isn't the card itself, it's the structure, or the lack of one, that's built around it. When you let trust completely replace oversight, you're creating an environment where fraud isn't just possible, it's practically inevitable. So, what's the process supposed to look like? Well, this flowchart here shows the ideal workflow. The cardholder makes a purchase, they get the goods, and they reconcile the statement. But there is one step in this chain that is just absolutely critically important. It's that little approving official reviews step. The Washington State Auditor found that the single most common weakness is the lack of an independent secondary review, a second set of eyes. When the person making the purchase is also the one approving it, or when their boss just rubber stamps the statement without really looking at it, the whole system collapses. That right there, that's the open vault. So what's the solution? Well, for years, governments have just relied on annual audits to catch these problems.
But waiting for an audit, that's like waiting for the smoke alarm to go off after the house has already burned to the ground. The shift we need to make is from being reactive to being proactive.
This comparison makes the difference crystal clear. Audits look backward. They look at a small sample of transactions, long after the money is already gone. Proactive monitoring, on the other hand, uses technology to review all transactions in near real time. It's about preventing the fire, not just documenting the ashes.
The good news is, there's already a playbook for this. The U.S. Government Accountability Office created this 4-step approach. It's all about understanding your risks, assessing your own controls, and actually testing your data. And that last step is so crucial. Actively using technology to search your data for red flags, like payments to weird vendors or unusual spending patterns, instead of just waiting for them to pop up on their own.
At the end of the day, as a leader in your community, your job is to be a steward of the public's money. P-card programs are an incredibly powerful tool for efficiency, but that power demands an equal measure of responsibility and, of course, oversight.
So here's the most important point. In every single one of these fraud cases we talked about, the data to find it was already sitting in the government's financial systems. The transactions, the vendors, the amounts, it was all there. The insight just showed up way too late. The challenge for you is to find that insight before it becomes a headline.
Which really just leaves us with one question for you to think about when you head back to your office. Is your P-card program the amazing efficiency tool it was meant to be? Or, without a proactive defense, have you accidentally left the vault wide open?